on the land of the Cherokee people in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm on the land of my ancestors. As I stand here, I think about my grandfather, my Cherokee grandfather, who was a decorated veteran who served directly under General Patton in World War II and hauled steel for the Big Three in Detroit. He's kind of a guy's guy. But every night before bed, when I was in Detroit, he would tell me the stories of Little Red Chief. Now, Little Red Chief was a young Cherokee boy who went through many obstacles and struggles as he came into his own realization of being a compassionate warrior. Now, my grandfather told me these stories every night before bed because he wanted me to remember two things. First, as I grow up as a white man, to never forget that I have indigenous blood. And two, as I go through my life, to never forget that at the core of my being, I am a compassionate warrior. But you might be asking, what is a compassionate warrior? I believe a compassionate warrior is anyone across the gender continuum who is ready, willing, and courageous enough to look at themselves with rigorous honesty and be willing to do the healing work that's required for them to come into their best selves. That's the experience that we don't do enough of in the world. When we do this work, what we're really doing is saying, let's look honestly at the wounds and then dig even deeper to the core wounds. And just start to elevate and lift up and embrace what the protective layers that we have that's shielding us from those wounds and from that pain, to really say, let's reframe this in a way that brings us into a different state of being. A compassionate warrior is courageous enough to walk into that self-reflection, that introspection, and that ability to look at themselves with love, with compassion, and say, I got you. To allow us to go to our wounds of childhood, to allow us to go and play from the place of our inner child, where the wounds were started. When we do this work, we are forced to experience a level of compassion for ourselves. What this does to us is it allows us then to move into a more expanded heart so we can be more compassionate to others. I don't know about you, but from what I've seen in the world, we could use a little bit more compassion. But we can't intellectualize compassion as this great idea. We have to come into our own inner work. And I believe that I'm hearing this way too much these days. Do the work. But quite honestly, I don't think most of us know what it means to do the work. We don't know how to start the work, or we're terrified of the Pandora's box that's going to open up when we do the work. So I believe that, one, we have to demystify what it means to do the work and give a roadmap for the ways to healing in a way that people can hear and understand, and it's not accessible, and it's not just for the elite. Now, I believe that a compassion-centered systems change approach could apply to organizations across sector. And as I think about this work, I think about it from three levels. First, that we provide employees and leaders the opportunity to do their own personal transformation work, their deep work, their healing work, their ego work. To allow them to come into their best selves so they can perform at even better levels than they could even imagine. The second is to create space for these individuals to be able to tap into their own deep intuitive knowing and trusting. And from that place, to start coming together with others who are doing the same thing, and then allow a collective wisdom to emerge so we can innovate differently than we ever have in the past. And then third, that we come together from this place essentially of deeper consciousness, and allow ourselves to start to innovate, to start to reimagine systems and structures and organizations and across society that are going to be inclusive, that are going to be compassionate, they're going to elevate the voices of all, that are going to reshape power dynamics. They will help us to look at leadership models differently, moving us from this place of fear to this place of empowerment. So that we are actually getting the best out of our people. We're getting the best performance out of our people. And our people are going to want to be able to work for us. They're going to want to stay. They're going to be attracted to an organization that actually takes care of them. You know, I hear a lot about human-centered design and bring your authentic voice to work. I think that's amazing, and I think that's a beautiful vision. And at the same time I ask, so how have you recalibrated all your systems to allow for someone's true, authentic voice from their full power to come into the organization and have a place that's consistent, congruent, and allowed in your culture? So I think we may have to look at the ways on every level, both visionary and on the granular. If we want to create these types of human-centered design in our workplaces, in our organizations, that integrate the balance of our action and our holding, our nurturing sides, our powerful sides, our collaborative sides, moving us from the I to the we in our cultures. This is where we're going to be able to innovate differently. And I believe that when we allow people to come into the healing work of their compassionate warrior, this is going to give them what they need to show up fully. The way our organizations are built now, how sustainable are we? With employee burnout at the rates that it is, and with the suicide rates the way that they are, with the mental health issues at the place that they are, especially in light of the pandemic, and racial injustice and division across politics. People are scared, people are afraid, people are angry, people are resentful, people don't know how to love the other side of whatever that division and difference looks like. And mental health issues right now are at an all-time high. So I would say, first get curious and reflect on what's actually happening in the world, what's happening with your people, and how the way organizations are operating, how are they contributing to the challenges, and I dare say the trauma that people experience. When we come from that place of curiosity, then we move to that place of reflection, then we can start to say, so what can we do? And I think the next step is to listen. And to try to understand what's really happening in the experience of your employees, what's happening with your customers, what's happening with your leaders, and especially what's happening with your middle managers who often get the least amount of attention but have the most responsibility. So get curious, reflect, listen, and bring people together to start to innovate differently. But before that, the first thing I would say to you is do your work. Ask yourself those same questions. Be curious about you and how you're showing up. Reflect on how you are in relationship with your employees, with your customers, with what you're doing. How you are leading others to do the work. And be ready for the realities that show up. Then start to listen and ask questions. Start to find out how people are really experiencing the reality that you're creating through your leadership. And then be willing to do your own inner work to relax your ego, to move from performative ways of being to authentic ways of being. And then to ask yourself, if I'm all head, Because that's how we've been conditioned. How do I move into my heart? And how do I move into this place of being able to give myself forgiveness so that I can really be in a more expanded, compassionate heart in the ways I make decisions in the business and for my employees and ultimately for my customers. So I would say at the core of all of this is do your inner healing work to find your own compassionate warrior and then start to spread it out. So when we walk in our wounds, we are wounding everyone around us. So when we can not be in the wounding and we can come from this place of healing, imagine what type of innovation we'll be able to do. When we allow ourselves to come into this place of being able to operate in organizations, operate in police departments, operate in social justice organizations, so we're not screaming because we're not being heard. And we're in places that nurture us, support us, and allow us to have a voice so we don't have to scream. This is the opportunity we have in organizations. I ask you to imagine what's possible if we were to come into our best integrated selves. If we started to operate from this place of heightened compassion and deeper consciousness, what becomes possible? If we put love at the center of our work, and not just love, not love with conditions, but unconditional love, that I see you, I feel you, I hear you, I witness you, and that we can bring this into our cultures, what becomes possible? And I ask you, what will this do to our relationships, to our organizations, to our governments, and to our society? When we can come from this place of healing, as opposed to continually being in this place of wounding that has divided us to the point that we feel broken as a nation and as a world. Imagine what would happen if each of us does our compassionate warrior work, comes in the place of our healing, and we have organizations that support us. Imagine the possibilities.